Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set the IP address to a non-default IP. As we can see here, we are using an Actatek external reader. It's a 1K Mifare version. So we're just going to go in here and change the IP to something other than the default. We will go with 201. Now we have to change our IP address up here, and if we log in now, we see that the same unit, the IP address, now ends with 201. So this process will detail what happens when you forget what IP address your unit got set to. Okay, now we need to take the external reader apart. So we'll flip it over here, unplug the power and the network cables with a small Phillips head screwdriver. We'll remove the 4 screws holding the back plate onto the front housing. And once we remove this last screw, we can separate the back plate from the front. Notice there's a wire that holds the two together, so be careful of that. Now let's take a look at the board up close. The red square indicates the spot that has the jumper. We're going to need to pull the jumper off of the bottom left 2 pegs and put it on the top right 2. So the 4th peg on the top row and the 4th peg on the second to the top row. And this is how we'll reset the hardware. Okay, now that that's done, we can put the unit back together temporarily. We don't need to put the screws in right now, but want to connect the network cable up and the power cable, and once that's connected, it'll start booting. So we see we have the green light on, so it's initializing. Okay, now let's take a closer look at the boot sequence. Once we plug in power, we get a green light, and that means it has power and it's initializing. Soon all 3 lights will go on temporarily. This is normal. Then just the amber and the green. And now we should see the amber light blink several times, and we just need to wait for this to finish. This is actually the reset process. And once the unit is reset, it will come back on and it will stay solid amber. And now the unit is reset, and we can disassemble it and put it back together. To put the unit back together, we're basically going to do the same procedure but in reverse. So unplug the power, unplug the network, remove the back from the front, and then we got to replace this little jumper. We're taking it off the top right position, and we're going to put it back on the bottom left position. Just like that. Okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is these little rubber O-rings tend to pop off, so carefully replace that back over the post there if one comes off. Give it a little push there. And then carefully replace the front cover over the back. You'll kind of feel it snap into place. Check the seams to make sure that it's fully together, and replace the screws. Once the screws are replaced, then we can boot it up and see that it is now reset, which we will go ahead and skip ahead to. And we flip it over now, and we see that it is initializing because we see the green light in the center. And then all the lights illuminate. And finally it is booted, and we are left with the center amber light, which indicates that it is networked and it is ready to read cards. Okay, now that our unit has been reset, we should be able to connect to it at the default 192.168.1.200. However, as you can see, that does not work. In the current firmware version, the unit actually resets to the default IP address of a standard Actatek unit. So in this case, it would be 100. As we can see at the 100 address, it has now reset this unit from 201 to 100. So that is likely to change with future firmware releases, but at least at this time, it does reset to 192.168.1.100.